Okay guys, so I want to come up here and make this video because I want to show and prove some information that I came across recently. So I have been doing a lot of digging and researching into the history of Spain and trying to see were there any Hebrews in Spain. And of course, you know, those that have done the history, you know that there were actually Hebrews or Jews or Israelites in Spain, along with the Moors and the Arabs and the Berbers. The Moors took over and conquered Spain in 711, and then they ruled until about 1462, I want to believe, is when they first started selling the first African slaves or Israelite slaves. But I want to take it a little bit further to show and prove that from what I've been researching and what I've been finding out, I am of the belief, and I do believe, that Spain is named after a Hebrew word. And what I mean by that is the Iberian Peninsula. So the Iberian Peninsula, which is what is known as Spain and Portugal today, from my understanding, comes from a Hebrew word, and I'm going to show and prove that right now. So I have screenshots because I was originally going to do an Instagram post, but I wasn't sure if my thought would come across the way I wanted it to, you know, with pictures and having people to read it. So what I decided to do was just make a video and talk myself through it. So what I'm going to do is start with these pictures. So first of all, I just did a little search on Instagram. On Wikipedia. Says here, okay, Spain, Iberia, which is a historical name for Spain and Portugal. When you see the highlighted part, it says prior historians use Iberia to mean the country this side of the Iberos, and they're talking about as far as north as the river in France, but that's talking about how high up or how many miles north the region goes. But what I want to point out is that the word Iberia is said to mean this side of the Iberios. Okay, now the Iberios is a river in Spain, and it's called today, or known today, as Ebro. Ebro, yes, Ebro. So I want to take it to the scripts really quickly. For those of you who know our language and know our history, you know where I'm going with this. So Genesis 10:21 says, unto Shem also, the father of all the children of Eber. Okay, the brother of Japheth the elder, even to him were children born. Then verse 24 says, Salah begat Eber. I'm showing Eber because Eber, well, let me say this, Iberos or Ebro sounds a lot like Eber. But the interesting thing is when you look into the words, this is where it gets interesting. The Hebrew word Eber means the region beyond. So you see Eber and you see Heber. I also want to point out that the Romans named that region Hiberian or Hiberia, which is where the Greeks get the term Iberia. Okay, it comes from that Roman term Hiberia. Okay, now when you look at this word Eber, you can see Iber or Iberia. You can also see that it's pronounced as Heber, which also kind of sounds like Hiber or Hiberia. Okay, and it means the region beyond. If you look above that, you see that it says the root word etymology is the same as Ibar. I'm speaking in Paleo Hebrew, H5676. When you look that word up, it's really interesting because it means, of course, the region beyond or across, but it means side or opposite. Okay, remember, Iberia means the country this side of the Ibros or Ebros River. Okay, now when you dig into this word even more, it gets even more interesting. Okay, this word means to pass over, to cross a stream, to cross over a bank of a stream, to pass over a stream or a sea, to pass over a stream, overflowing their banks, passing over water. Okay, now when you think about the land Iberia and you see the historical facts, meaning this side of the Ibros River, now you can see why my understanding is that, based off the information I'm showing now, is that Iberia was named by Iberias or Israelites, Hebrews. Okay, showing and proving that we were once truly in that land, and thriving as a people. Okay, now the next thing I want to point out here is this script. Actually, let me show another one real quick. So, this is the Latin word Hiberia, which is similar to the Greek word Iberia, and it literally translates to the land of the Hiberians. This word was derived from the river Ebro, which the Romans called Hiberias. Hiber or Iberian was thus used as a term for peoples living near the river Ebro. So there you have it. You can see the correlation between Iber in Eber and Hiberia and Heber or Hebrew. Okay. Now, what I wanted to point out was, I think it's this one here. Yes, this is also another page on online where I found information about Spain or the Iberian Peninsula. But look at the script at the top. It says Northeast Iberian script. Okay. Now those letters look, those characters look very, very, very interesting to me. Okay. Now let's look at this. See if I can turn it over here to make it easier for you all to see. This here is a plaque from La Bastida de les Alcuce, whatever, using the southeastern Iberian script. Now, this is also an Iberian script from the Iberian Peninsula, from the land that is on the other side, or this side of the Ebro River. This is the script, okay? Now, if you know the language, the Paleo Hebrew, you can also probably see where I'm going with this. If you look at these really closely, you can make out some very, very similar words, or letters, I should say, characters to our actual language. So if you look at this one, I'm going left to right here. You can see the qua, the circle with a line down the middle. Next to that, you can see the ra, kind of looks like a number 4. Next to that, you can see a za, which looks like the letter Z. Okay. Over here, you can see what looks like on the very far right. You can see what looks like a sa. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm going to show you some images in a little bit. If you look here, you can see what looks like a letter M, but that is a ma. To the right of that is what looks like a P, and if I'm not mistaken, that looks like a pa to me. Going to the left of the M, you can see what looks like a funky F. That looks like a ya to me, okay? Now mind you, this is script from Iberian Peninsula, ancient script from the Iberian Peninsula, okay? Now if you look at this one here, it looks like a little pitchfork, kind of, sort of. It looks like a sha to me, okay? There was one more I wanted to show. See if I can find it again. Okay, this isn't it, I just saw this one. The little O in the middle looks like an ayin, okay? And that's what I wanted to show you. Right above that, it looks like the beginnings of a stick figure, but it's missing the head and the arms. But you can see like what looks like a body and 2 legs. That actually looks like an upside down wa to me, okay? So I'm showing you all this because I want to show and prove the similarities between this Iberian script, okay, and what we call and know today as Paleo Hebrew. One second. Okay, now this is a plaque of ancient Paleo Hebrew writings, okay? If you look closely, up here you can see I hope you can make that out, the one line down the middle with 3 lines going across. You can see the sa, okay? Let me see if I can find something a little better, okay? This might be a little easier to read. Okay, so here, this little W looking figure, remember what I said, the pitchfork, that is, the W is a sha, which is what I believe the little pitchfork was representing, okay? And if you look closely, you can see in the middle of the screen, a circle with a line going through it, that is a qua. If you look 2 letters over to the right of that, you can see, looks like a capital Y, but remember, the little stick figure character, it's just reversed now. That's a wa, okay? So you can see that the letters are very much so similar. And if you remember what I said, looks like a number 4 in the other Iberian script, you can see this right here in the center of the page. A ra looks like a number 4 as well, okay? Okay, now this is the actual plaque that was said to be found in the Iberian Peninsula, okay? And this is where they made the I don't know if it's casting or what the thing, or I'm forgetting the word, but this is the plaque that they used to recreate and show the letters that I showed you earlier, okay? But I want to zoom in on something on this. If you zoom in here, if you look closer, you can see what looks like a little star. That to me looks like a ka, okay? And what I want to show next is this here. This is ancient Hebrew alphabet, okay? Now, if you go over to the top left on the first row, Hebrew is read from right to left, but I'm going left to right now. If you go to the top left, you'll see the ka. Remember the little star that we was just looking at? Okay. Now, if you go over to the right of that, you see the ya. Remember the little funky F? And I can go back and show you one a little bit. Now, if you go over some more, see if I can zoom in, you see the za, which is right underneath the R in Hebrew. Remember the Z? To the right of that, you see the wa. Remember the little stick figure? Okay. Now, if you go down beneath that and go over to the right, you see the circle. That's called an I, or ayin, as people will call it today in the modern Hebrew. To the right of the I is the sa. Remember the 3 lines with the one line going down to the middle? Okay. Now, another one I want to point out is if you go over to the far left of the screen, at the bottom row, you see the tha. Next to that, you see the sha. Remember the W and the little pitchfork. Next to that is the ra. Okay, remember the number 4. To the right of that is the qua, the circle with the line down the middle. Now, if you don't remember what I'm talking about, let me show you. Okay, so this is the casting that was used. This is the casting of the Iberian script, and what I was just showing you beforehand is just ancient Paleo script, okay? But what is before you was actually taken from the Iberian Peninsula, and it actually was called ancient Iberian. It was actually called Iberian script, okay? So you see the little pitchfork down here. That's the sha. To the right of that would be the sa. To the right of that would be the qua. Above the qua is the ra, number 4, little number 4. Let's see here. And if you look here, you see the little funky F. You see the ya. To the right of that, you see a ma. Above the funky F, I said it was an I, but actually looking up again at it, I think it might be a ta. But my point is that we can study this all day and night, but I hope that you all are able to see the correlation and the similarities between the Iberian script and the ancient Paleo Hebrew script, okay? And also remember, Iberia is a Greek translation, which is derived from the Roman Hiberia, which is derived from the Latin Hiberius, okay? And when you go back to that and you look at those words, that sounds a lot like the Hiberius and the Hiber and Hiberian sounds a lot like Heber, which is one of our ancestors' names, the progenitor of the race of Hebrews, one of the progenitors of the race of the Hebrews, okay? And then you see Ibar, which is the beginning of half of the Iberia or Iberian Peninsula. Iber, that sounds like Eber, which is the name of our ancestor that was one of the progenitors of the Hebrew race. Now, mind you, Eber is pronounced in the modern Hebrew Ivri or Ibri, okay? And in Paleo Hebrew without the vowels, it's pronounced as Ibar. So you can see where the name Iberian ties into the name Eber as well as Heber or Ibar and Heber or Hebrew, okay? Also remember, Eber means region beyond, okay? When you go to the root word of that word, that word is the same as, it's spelled exactly the same as Eber or Ibar. That means side or opposite, along with, region across, whatever, but it means side or opposite side, okay? And remember, Iberian or Iberia means the country this side of the Ebro River, okay? Now, when you go into the root word of the root word, or actually no, when you go into a deeper study of the root word of Ibar, the one that means side and opposite side, this deeper study of that word, it shows you that it means to pass over. Generally, typically, on average, speaking about crossing over a body of water, crossing over a river, crossing over a stream, okay? Let me go back and show you. Okay, you see here in the highlighted part, Iberia means this side of the Iberos, okay? Remember, Iberos is a translation of the word Ebro, which is a river in Spain. You see it right here. The Ebro is a river on the Iberian Peninsula, okay? Now, when you look at the word, again, Ibar or Eber, it means the region beyond. Above that root etymology, you see the same as Ibar, H5676. When you look at that word, it means region beyond or across, side or opposite, okay? Remember, the land this side of the Ebro River, okay? When you look deeper into that word, it says to pass over, to cross a stream, a bank of stream, the sea, yada, 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 to cross over a stream. So again, I'm under the impression, understanding that Iberia comes from the root word, or it comes from the word, Iber, which means to cross over. And when you dig into it, the opposite side, the other side of a stream that has been crossed over. I hope you all can see that, okay? Now, I want to point out here, it says, let's go up to, let's start here in the middle here with reference. With reference to this border, Paleo states that the native name is Eber. Eber. Ibar. It's Hebrew, okay? Apparently, the original word stripped of its Greek or Latin OS or US termination. Okay? Now, keep going. It says the early range of these natives, which geographers and historians place from the present southern Spain to the present southern France along the Mediterranean coast, is marked by instances of a readable script expressing a yet unknown language dubbed Iberian. I find that laughable because anybody who studies languages, ancient languages of the past, have to come across 3 languages: Arabic, Aramaic, Hebrew. Those are the cradle civilization languages, okay? If you study Hebrew, then I'm sure you're going to go back to knowing the Paleo Hebrew, or at least the Paleo Hebrew script letters. I find it very funny that they cannot see the correlation between what is known as Iberian script and Paleo Hebrew script, okay? But they're going to tell you they don't know, okay? Keep going. Dubbed Iberian. Whether this was the native name or was given to them by the Greeks for the residents near the Ebro remains unknown. Interesting. Credence in polybias imposes certain limitations on etymologizing. If the language remains unknown, the meanings of the words including Iber, must also remain unknown. But it's not unknown because I just showed you all in the scriptures that Ibar means Hebrew or region beyond, crossing over the opposite side. So again, it sounds like they're trying to cover up the history of the Iberian Peninsula because they don't want it to be shown and proved that it goes back to Hebrew. Maybe I'm stretching, but I don't think so. Continue on. In modern Basque, I'm sure I'm saying that word wrong, but in modern Basque, the word Ibar means valley or watered meadow, while Ibai means river. But there is no proof relating the etymology of the Ebro River with these Basque names. I find it very interesting that if they didn't know the meaning of Ibar and the root word of Ibar or Eber and how it means the region beyond crossing over the opposite side, crossing over a stream, why is it that they would take the time to make sure that they say there's no evidence or there's no proof linking Ibar with river or Ibar with water or crossing over water? I find that interesting. Hope that makes sense. Another last thing I want to point out in the scriptures is that we were in Spain as long ago as the Apostle Paul's days. And I'm going to show that. Give me 1 second. Okay, here we are in Romans 15. Now, when you read this, okay, first of all, if you read my book, who did the Apostle Paul go to, Gentiles or Israelites? If you have read it, or if you haven't read it, I'll leave it linked down below where you can purchase it. If you are interested, I highly suggest reading that. I highly suggest reading that because in that book, I break down and show and prove that Paul only went to Israelites. He did not go to Gentiles. What he went to were people, Israelites, that were living amongst Gentiles, living as Gentiles because they had been cut off from the law. They had been cut off from their people, okay? So he went there to awaken them pretty much and let them know to repent and come back to the God of their fathers and the ways of their forefathers, okay? So when you read Romans 15, verse 24, he says, whensoever I take my journey into Spain, not through Spain, not by Spain, not around Spain, but into Spain, I will come to you. Now remember, if you read my book, you know he only goes to Israelites. Jump down to verse 28. He says, when therefore I have performed this, he's speaking about his ministry that he had to do in Jerusalem before he came to Spain. He says, when therefore I have performed this and have sealed to them this fruit, I will come by you into Spain. So the Apostle Paul, writing about Israelites, to Israelites, going to Israelites, ministering to Israelites, says that I'm going to take my journey. I'm going to come to you when I come into Spain. So I just find that very interesting that when you look up the word Iberian Peninsula, they tell you themselves that it means the country or the land this side of the Ebro's River. When you look up the word Ebros, I'm pretty sure if I can put it together, I know these scholars can put it together as well. Ebros definitely goes back to Eber. Eber was one of the progenitors of the Hebrews, okay? Eber means the region beyond, the region over, like crossing over, okay? When you look at the root word for Eber, it takes you to another word, which is spelled just like Eber, pronounced differently in modern Hebrew. But I pronounce it the same in the Paleo Hebrew. It'd actually be Ibar for both of them. The root word of Ibar, meaning the region beyond or region crossing over, the root word of that means the same thing, region or beyond, but it says side, this side or opposite. Again, Iberia means the land this side of the Eber River, okay? Now, also, when you look deeper into the root word that means this side or opposite, it means to pass over a stream. I don't see how anybody couldn't see this. If you study it, I don't see how anybody can miss this, even though they'll tell you, oh, we don't know where this language comes from. Even when you look at the scripts, the Iberian scripts, the letters very much so closely resemble and parallel ancient Hebrew scripts. I don't understand. So I hope you all can see that. If you do, please let me know. And I don't know, I guess pass it on or something. I don't know. Just, I was overwhelmed when I saw it with emotions, because when I started putting the connections together, because it just shows me, one, Hebrews have a very extensive history, okay? Not just in the land of Israel, but throughout, because we were scattered all over. And also, there has been such a great attempt to assassinate who these people are, who these people were. You can watch a lot of historians and study a lot of historians, which is what led me into the Hebrew understanding, because I started out watching a lot of African historians, learning about Africa, and they will always talk about people that were mentioned in the Bible, like King Taharka or King Darius and the Persians, and I'm sitting here like, okay, well, when are we going to come across King David? When are you going to talk about King David? And they never talk about King David. And that's when I started wondering why. Actually, it was the Most High building my spirit to start thinking, like, why is it that they never talk about the people that were in the Bible? They treat them as if they were fictional characters, when you can see that they are proving in history that people that our ancestors dealt with, existed. So if these people existed and our ancestors dealt with them, then that means that our ancestors had to exist. But they never go that far into it. Or let me say it like this. They go that far into it, they never make it public. And I wonder why. Well, we all know why. But it just goes to show the extent of how much these wicked, evil people have done to, from my understanding. I could be wrong in everything that I'm saying. I find it difficult to believe that. But from my understanding, where I sit, and based off the information I just shared and showed you all, it really behooves me how far people will go to erase, or try to erase, the holy, righteous, chosen seed of Israel from off the face of the earth. They will take our names out of things. They will change the look and color of who we are. They will assign our identity to a whole other people. They will even erase our presence in countries and lands and so forth, and our contributions to different countries in Europe, Africa, wherever, Asia, wherever. They will go as far as to remove it. But the Most High always has a way of allowing the truth to come out. So I'm grateful for that. And I hope you all understand that. I hope you all got that. And I hope you all have a blessed Shabbat. I need to go to sleep because I've been up all night now. Good night. Okay, y'all. So I want to come back up here because I have some more information that I want to share. Thanks and praise be to the Most High, Yah. So I was talking about the Iberian Peninsula and how I say that it is, from my understanding and my research and from seeing what I see, it's named after the Hebrew word Iber or Eber, okay? So if you scroll down here, you see it says the Greek name. The word Iberia is a noun adapted from the Latin word Hiberia, originating in the ancient Greek word Iberia. And I'm going to make this pretty quickly because I kind of went over all of this in the first video, the first half, but I want to point out a few other things. So it comes from the word Hiberia, and I'm going to find in here somewhere where it says that the word Hiberia, okay, here it is. It says the Latin, starting here with the Latin word. The Latin word Hiberia, similar to the Greek Iberia, literally translates to the land of the Hiberians. The word was derived from the river Ebro, which in our language would be Eber, which the Romans called Hiberias. Hiber, or Iberian, was thus used as a term for the peoples living near the river Ebro. Okay, Hiber. Okay, now when you remember what I pointed out in the other passage, Heber. Let me just pull this up really quick. I'm gonna come back to this scripture, but come on. Hiber sounds a lot like, or it comes from Eber, if that makes sense. And Eber, which we know is a Hebrew word, it means the region beyond. Okay, so it says Heber was the term used to describe the peoples living near the Eber River, or Ebro River. Okay. Now, I want to point out something that they talked about with the land of the Hiberians, and I feel like that definitely points to the Hebrews, because if you remember in the scripture, let me type it in. Joseph, when he got down to Egypt, he said, and this is Genesis 40 and 15, he was talking to Pharaoh, and he was saying, "For indeed I was stolen away out of the land of the Hebrews." Okay, now mind you, remember, we read over here, Hiberia is derived from, it's similar to the Greek word Iberia, and it literally translates to land of the Hiberians. You go back to Genesis 40 and 15, Joseph said, "I was stolen out of the land of the Hebrews." Okay, we already can put together and see that Hiber and Hiberian sounds a lot like Heber and Hebrew. Okay, so when we look at this scripture in the interlinear Hebrews, you have one from beyond, and it's Ibri or Iberias in our language, Paleo Hebrew, and it means one from beyond. Remember, in the other half of the video, it says that Iberia comes from, it means the country or this land this side of the river Ebro. Okay, now another thing I want to point out is this paragraph here. So the Iberian Peninsula has always been associated with the river Ebro, Alberios in ancient Greek, and Iberias or Hiberius in Latin. Sounds a lot like Iberia, Hebrew, Heber, anyway. The association was so well known, it was hardly necessary to state, for example, Iberia was the country this side of the Iberias in Strabo. Pliny goes so far as to assert that the Greeks had called the whole of Spain Hiberia because of the Hiberius River. The river appears in the Ebro Treaty of 226 BC, so 226 years before the Messiah was born. This treaty was between Rome and Carthage, setting the limit of the Carthaginian interest at the Ebro, or the river Ebro. The fullest description of the treaty, stated in Appian, uses Iberias, okay, which, with reference to the border, to this border, which meaning the Ebro River. Polybius states that the native name is Iber. Okay, look that up. Look at that. Iber, which we know in our Hebrew language, Paleo Hebrew. Iber goes back to, let's not even get to Paleo yet. Iber goes back to Eber. When you add vowels to Iber, you pronounce the I as an E. Eber. Iber. Eber is the ancestor of the Hebrews. When you take the vowels out and go back to the Paleo Hebrew, Eber becomes Ibar, which looks a lot like this one. You just changed the E to an A. That was the native name of the land of Spain and Portugal, the Iberian Peninsula. And it says apparently the original word stripped of the Greek and Latin OS or US termination at the end. Okay, I already showed you all the Iberian script and all of that in the first video. But what I want to point out is more people that were going down to Spain in the scripture. Now, before I get to that, I do want to point out this website here. This is what actually started everything for me, because like I said, I've been doing research on Spain and Iberia and Portugal, and I went to this website because this is a Black-owned and Black-ran website, and they always talking about the true origins of all these countries that are claimed now today to be from white people, which couldn't be further from the truth. But I'm not going to get into that portion of it. But let me get to what they have on Spain and Iberia, Spain and Portugal, Iberia. Okay, so it says here, the Iberian Peninsula, because of its close proximity to Africa, has been inhabited for at least 1 million years. Now, I don't go with the dates, that sounds like scientific dates, but it doesn't actually line up with the Bible, so let's just kind of look over that if you will. And then it goes on to say, at about 45,000 BC, the Khoisan type African Grimaldi man became the first modern man to enter Europe. He crossed the Gibraltar Strait and started his journey into Europe. Where did I get Erica from? Into Europe. Europe and Africa are now separated by 7.7 nautical miles. During glacial periods, it was much less. So I want to point this out, saying that it says here that the first type of African was to enter into Europe. It was this Grimaldi man, and he has DNA that's very similar to, or his DNA today is found mostly or very similarly related to the people of the San tribe, okay? I have always personally been of the belief that the San people come from the seed of Japheth. They are black people who were in Europe first. They are now in South Africa, but they were in Europe first, and you can see that they came into Europe first by crossing through the Gibraltar Strait. Now, another thing I want to point out is when you look up, let me see if I can find it, the word Ibar or Eber, and you go to the root word of it. I didn't point this out in the first video, but I forgot. Strong's definition says a region across on the opposite side, against, beyond, and it says at the very bottom, side or strait. So I find it very interesting. The Gibraltar Strait, which is in the Iberian Peninsula, is, I feel like there's a possible connection between it being called the Strait of Gibraltar, and it being in the Iberian Peninsula, and the root word of Iberia goes back to Iber, and Iber means straight or side. Anyway, but when you put that together with the San people, or which I believe to be Japheth seas, crossing the Gibraltar Strait, going into Europe, being the first ones into Europe, it kind of makes sense, because when you go into the scriptures, okay, and you look up Tarshish, which is a city in Spain, which you know today, Genesis 10:4, the sons of Javan, Tarshish, you see that Tarshish, okay? And I'm rushing through, but you can study this on your own. Tarshish was a son of Japheth. So when you read Genesis 10:2, the sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, and Madai, and Javan, and Tubal, and Meshach, and Tyrus, and the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, and Rithphah, and Togarmah. And then it goes on to say, the son of Javan, Elisha, in Tarshish, okay? When you put that scripture with this history saying that the first man, an African man, to go into Europe was the San people, and again, like I said before, I believe the San people are of a Japhetic seed. It makes sense because Tarshish is in Spain, and you see that Tarshish was the son of Javan, and you know that the San people are not Bantu people, but they are still black African people. I have a small percentage of Khoisan or San DNA in me. I connect with their DNA on a very small level, which would make sense being that they are the brother to my ancestor Shem, and we have the same parents, so we are going to share DNA, right? Now, the next thing I want to point out is that it said here that the native name of Iberia, let me figure it out, let me find where I'm going. The native name of Iberia, or was it this one? Sorry, y'all, I'm kind of rushing. It says that the native name of Iberia was Iber. Can't really seem to find that right now where it was at. But we read that earlier. The native name for Iberia goes back to Iber. Okay? Now, I'm using this to point out that Hebrews were there a very long time. Not as long as the seed of Japheth, because I believe they were there first, the San type people. But we were there for a very long time, okay? Jonah, I don't know why I'm getting those two mixed up today. Jonah, we already know that Tarshish was the son of Javan, who was the son of Japheth, okay? We know the story about Jonah. Jonah went to get, instead of going to Nineveh, he went to catch a ship into Tarshish, which is in Spain, okay? Now, it says in this thing, if I can find it, okay, the Ebro Treaty was in the year 226 BC, and in that treaty they stated that the native name of the land of Iberia was Iber, or Eber, okay, 226 BC. Now, when I was looking up Jonah, actually my father was looking it up, he found somewhere where it says that Jonah lived in the 9th century BC, and he died in the 8th century BC. So that means he was born about 730 years or so before the Ebro Treaty. What I'm saying is that Jonah was automatically going to Tarshish because he was familiar with that. At least that's how it comes across in scriptures. He didn't want to go to Nineveh, so he found another way to go, trying to avoid that and flee from Nineveh. So he went somewhere that seemed familiar to him, which, we would, we would do that. And Tarshish was a familiar place for him. I don't think it'll make sense for him to try to flee going to Nineveh and run to a place he's never been to before with people he don't know or anything he doesn't know anything about. He went into Tarshish, okay? Jonah was a Hebrew. We know that. He was an Israelite. Now, he lived, according to the history that we found, my father found, he was born about 730 or so years before this treaty. This treaty says that the native name of Iberia is Iber, okay? So if Jonah was going to Tarshish, which is in Iberia or Iber, and he was living in the time frame he went was about 700 to 600 years before this treaty was even written, then that proves that we were in that land walking our feet long before, much longer than people would think, okay? Excuse me, I'm so sorry. In the other video, I was showing how Paul was saying, I'm going to come to the Israelites and come to a group of Israelites that were in Spain. That was in Romans. And I believe that was around 50 or 60 AD. So these are hundreds of years apart, okay? But Paul was still trekking into Spain, visiting Israelites and Hebrews there. And around, I think that was around 60 AD, okay? Somewhere in that area. We see that the treaty in history, the treaty states that the native name of the Iberian Peninsula is Iber, Ibar, which means Hebrew, one beyond. And that treaty was in 226 BC. When we study out Jonah, we believe, we see that from what I read and what I found, Jonah was born in the 9th century BC, and he died in the 8th century BC. So he lived between 700 to 600 years before this treaty here. And he was going into Tarshish. We even read, we also know that Tarshish was the son of Javan, who was the son of Japheth, and he was in that land. He was in Europe. We saw that from the history on this website here, that the San type person, which I believe the Sans have DNA with Japheth, though. They say they're believed to have the oldest DNA on Earth, and I believe that's because they are the least mixed people. So therefore their DNA has been uncontaminated the most because they go straight back to Noah. This is my opinion, and this is what I believe. I believe that it is true, even though I may not have all the scholarly articles to prove it at this point, but I can put two and two together. Anyway, so we know that they were going into that land thousands of years before Jonah, or hundreds of years before Jonah, okay? Another scripture I want to point out here, Chronicles 20:37. Then the son, let me go to it. Then Eliezer, the son of Dodavah of Marashah, prophesied against Jehoshaphat, saying, because thou hast joined thyself to Ahaziah, Yahweh has broken thy works. And the ships were broken, that they were not able to go into Tarshish. Now, this is, if I'm not mistaken, the Chronicles, and this time frame is before Jonah. So we can see that if we look at the time frame that I've built, from my videos, Paul was going into Spain to speak to Israelites around 50 or 60 AD. This treaty that we read about in Wikipedia says that the native land, the native name of the land Iberia is Iber, Ibar. That was in 226 BC. We go back even further, we read that Jonah was going into Tarshish to flee from Nineveh. And from the history that I found, my father found, Jonah was born in the 9th century BC, and he died around the 8th century BC. So he was born about 730 years before the treaty, stating the native name of Iberia was Iber, okay? And he was already going into Tarshish, which is in Iberia, okay? Then we can go back even further, and we can see that this here, Jehoshaphat was trying to flee into Tarshish, which I believe was before Jonah's day, or at least somewhere in the same proximity, but it's still ancient time. If we go back even further from there, we can read that Japheth's son, Javan, had a son named Tarshish. And we also read in the history, which I believe that the San people link back to the seed of Japheth, are directly descendants of Japheth. And we read in history that they were the first ones actually going into Europe, which makes sense because Japheth was giving the land in the north. He went into Europe. We had the land in the middle, which is what the so-called Middle East, and Ham had the land in the south, which is actually upper North Africa today. Okay, so it makes sense when you put all this history together. So I wanted to share that, and I hope that makes sense. I hope you guys can get that. I hope I wasn't going too fast. But basically what I was trying to show and prove. Oh, and also we know from reading that they put the Romans called that land Hiberia, which literally translates into, oh gosh, I can't find it now, but we read it earlier. Hiberia literally translates into the land of the Hiberians, which sounds very familiar and closely related to what Jonah said. But why am I getting those two mixed up? What Joseph said in Genesis 40, I believe. Yeah, Genesis 40 and 15, he said he was stolen from the land of the Hebrews, okay? And we'll look that word up. It means, in the plural form of it is Iberias, and it means a Hebrew, one from beyond. Now, I wanted to pull up this too to show the connection in the Greek. Okay. Okay, let's just go to this word here. Let's go to this passage here, 2 Corinthians 11. Okay. So, Paul says that he's in Hebrew. In the Greek, that word is Hebreos. And it goes back to Eber. When you look at the Roman, okay, Hebreos, and when you look at the word in the Roman, here we are, Hiberians, Hiberia, as you can see here, it looks very closely related to the Greek word Hebreos, Iberias. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. And then it also says here, this word was derived from the river Ebro. When you go to the Greek, Hebrew, or Hebrew in the Greek, Hebreos, comes from the root word Eber. So as you can see, the land that we're talking about was inhabited by Israelites, Hebrews, when the Romans and the Greeks got there. Now, mind you, we're not the first ones there. I do believe that you can see in scriptures and history that the seed of Japheth was there first. And for some reason, we have a history of, claiming Japheth land. Because if you look at the Bantu migration, we went down to South Africa. The Bantu people were not the first ones there. The San people were there first, and we kind of assimilated into the land, and we kind of took on living there, and now we're trying to claim it back from the white people, but actually that's not even our land to reclaim, to be honest with you, because our land is up in Israel, in the land of Shem, the land that is in South Africa, which I know a lot of people say, oh, that's the true Israel, which doesn't make sense when you look at scriptures, because Israel, the Most High says Israel is landlocked and joint neighbors to Egypt in Ezekiel 16, I believe it is. That's a whole different subject, excuse me. But he says that Israel, he was frustrated with Israel at that time when he was prophesying through Ezekiel, saying that, you guys joined with the Egyptians, your neighbors, and started doing wickedness. Well, the true land of Israel is in South Africa, then how could we have joined with our neighbors, the Egyptians, Egypt? So it doesn't make sense. But anyway, the Bantu migration, we went into South Africa, amongst other places. We went down into South Africa, and then we encountered the San people there. From them, the Khoi people came, and you have the Khoi San, but they are not a Bantu people. They are not the same as us, but they are still African people, black people. Anyway, I'm saying that, you can see that the land of the Hiberians sounds a lot like what Joseph said, the land of the Hebrews. When you look up the word Hebreos in the Greek, is derived from the word Eber. And it says here that Hiberia, or Hiberian, or Heber, in the Roman or Latin, is derived from the word Ebro. They both go back to the same word, regardless of the language that's spoken. And it both goes back to Hebrew, which goes back to us, Israelites. Okay. And then I remember hearing something too about that the Moors that were in there, a lot of them were Israelites too, but that's a whole different topic. But I hope that makes sense, and I hope you guys can see and understand the connection that I put with the Iberian Peninsula, the land of Spain and Portugal today, and our Hebrew, in our Hebrew, I don't want to say origins, but our Hebrew history connected to that. So, you all have a great day. I'll see you later. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.